Buenos días. Bienvenido a la Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de la Misión Shawnee. Quien quiera que seas, quien quiera que ames, donde quiera que estés en el viaje de tu vida, eres bienvenido aquí. Good morning. Welcome to Shawnee Mission Unitarian Universalist Church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We are so happy that you've chosen this YouTube channel, this Sabbath, this sanctuary in time. We know that you have so many options on Sunday morning, and that you chose to be here is something we celebrate. We extend an especially warm welcome to our visitors and anyone who may be watching our service online for the first time. Please complete the Get in Touch online form by checking the link below in our video description. And for anyone watching the service today online, please join us for online fellowship time immediately after the service. This online fellowship time will give you a chance to discuss the service and to connect with others in casual conversation. Drop in after the service and say hello. Just click the link in the video description below. We now invite everyone to greet each other by saying a quick hi in the video chat. Also, if you have a joy or a sorrow to share, please feel free to do so in the video chat. Please remember that our online service and video chat is open to the public. And I have just a few announcements. A reminder that we are having an all-church picnic on Saturday, August 13th at Shawnee Mission Park. So far, 83 people have signed up to attend. We would like everyone coming to register for the event so we know how much food and drink to have on hand. Your weekly all-church email has a link for you to sign up and attend the picnic and a link for you to sign up to help in some way. We need people who have registered to also visit the Sign Up Genius link to let us know what they can bring and how they can help. There are many open slots. Our hymn, to laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self. To place our ideas, our dreams, before the crowd is to risk loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To hope is to risk despair, and to try is to risk failure. To live is to risk dying. Let us come to worship the beauty in our ordinary lives. Please rise as we are willing and able for hymn number 298.
Wake now, my my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now, my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
Now, Richard Peace will come forward to light our chalice. And we invite all of you to join us as we recite our covenant. Let us affirm that love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another.
Each month, we as a community take time to reflect on a theme. The children do this in their classes, and we do it here in worship in our small groups. This month, the theme is transformation. Na 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 na, na 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 na. I'll bet you have heard that before, probably being taunted by young playmates. The interesting part is kids in most societies use the same phrase, the same words, musically and rhythmically. How come most four-legged creatures know how to walk soon after birth, sometimes within hours? So where am I going with this? It is central to a transformation I had in my view of how to deal with people who are down or have strange spirituality. I recently had to learn at work all about and implement artificial intelligence, which in my case involved neural networks. These are computer programs that mimic the neurons in the brain mathematically to draw conclusions about data when you don't know the equation that forms the relationship. For example, suppose you have lots of data about a group of voters. Where am I? Their demographics and how they voted. You want to predict from that data how a new voter might vote, given his demographics compared with the data you have, and then feed it to new data. The program will give you a probability of how a new person will vote. This isn't unusual. It probably happens 10,000 times every election. My view on how our brain works dealing with feelings was the transformation. The trouble is that we can only analyze to the capacity of our brains, which is not limitless. It is like being in a house and never leaving. You know the house contents very well, and being asked, what color is your house? You can't see the outside. You don't have the faculties to know the answer. Because I am close to persons with mental problems, I get insight in how the brain functions. It is like a neural network that is trained with some data when it is formed in the room, like the operating system, and learns other insights as we grow, like applications. But we can't see the stuff we are born with, and you can't see much of the stuff that happens to you before age 5. Discussing psychic insights, visions of the future, and other manifestations of paranormal events recently, I was transformed from a scientific, show me the evidence, unbeliever to a new insight. This came a few nights ago when I had a deep discussion about spirituality with an autistic person and one with PTSD who seems to be able to walk up to a stranger and know their background and situation from some sort of aura the stranger gives out. I now believe our brains may be able to somehow transmit thoughts and feelings to others, possibly with preset functions we are born with and can't see. These uncanny experiences of remote insight and deep empathy without evidence may sometimes be real, not coincidence. This has made a huge difference in how I see thoughts and feelings in others that don't match mine, how triggering works in PTSD, how autistic people think and react to local happenings. I feel the world of understanding has transformed me. Thank you.
What is a puppet? How is a puppet brought to life? Think about that for a second. A puppet is a model of a living thing like Pinocchio. Pinocchio was a model of a young boy. A puppet is typically brought to life by a person who controls it by strings from above or by a hand inside it. This week, I explored the story of Pinocchio, but I was surprised to learn that the Disney story many of us have experienced is very different from the original story, The Adventures of Pinocchio by Carlo Lorenzini, When I watched the Disney film as a child, I remember how Pinocchio's pointy nose grew every time he told a lie. So I thought one of the big lessons was that in order for Pinocchio to become a real boy, that he would need to be good and always tell the truth. And if I were to lie, there would be bad consequences for me. As I read the original story, I learned that it's a story about the importance of learning and growing into the people we wish to be. Let's take a minute to explore a brief version of the original story. In the original story, Pinocchio was a naughty boy who made a lot of poor choices. In fact, as soon as his father Geppetto carved him out of wood, he made fun of the old man's face, stole his wig, and ran away, which led to Geppetto's arrest. Later on, Pinocchio turned into a donkey as a punishment for refusing to learn at school and instead skipping to run off to playlands. A wise friend warned him, "You poor little sucker, don't you know you're bound to grow up to be an absolute donkey and that everyone will make a fool of you?" Because Pinocchio refused to learn, he was easily tricked by a fox and a cat, who tricked him out of 4 gold coins that could have been spent to help feed him and his father. It was only after Pinocchio began to focus on learning that he began to see beyond himself and care for those in his life. This new empathy allowed him to save Geppetto from a shark and nurse him back to health while he spent his nights studying. And then one night, he was visited by the blue fairy. When he saw the blue fairy, Pinocchio said, "I would like to grow." "But you cannot grow," said the fairy. "Why?" "Because puppets never grow. They are born puppets. They live like puppets, and they die puppets." "Oh, but I'm tired of being always a puppet. I want to become a man." "And you will become one if you deserve to." "Truly? And what do I do to deserve it?" "That's easy. Have a good heart and keep learning. There is always hope for boys who are learning, even if they sometimes lie and make poor choices." When Pinocchio refused to learn, he allowed others to manipulate and control him like a puppet. He stayed a puppet. But Pinocchio came to realize that to learn is to transform. The act of learning allows us to grow into the people we wish to be and expands our capacity to care for the people around us. So continue to learn and ask questions. Don't let others pull your strings.
And now is the time in our service where we are invited to share a rare joy or profound sorrow. Feel free to post your joy or sorrow in the chat, and do remember chat comments are public. While Ben plays the musical interlude, we will all light candles in recognition.
Now reading Truth by L. Owens. I want the truth, the whole truth, not your spin doctor soundbite version of the truth, but the real deal, honest to God, Baptist preacher on Easter Sunday morning truth. The kind of truth you only tell your mama because she's psychic, and it's a waste of time trying to tell her anything else anyway. Okay, let's have it. I'm a big girl and I can take it. I won't cry. I want the truth, the whole truth. Did you eat the last damn slice of pizza?
Obviously wrong, but still have a hope and a prayer, but nothing you can count on.
It's getting crazy out there, didn't think it would happen to you. Sometimes it doesn't seem fair, and it blindsides you. So what do you say to someone with a blind spot for the truth? This conversation's done, and I hope you get well soon. Some people just don't care, they just wanna be left alone. Still have a hope and a prayer, but no one you can count on.
Some people can't understand. What if it's someone you thought you knew? Someone you thought was a friend, and it's blindsided you.
So what do you say to someone with a blind spot for the truth? This conversation's done, and I hope you get well soon. Now you lie where you fell. They set you up in time for their hard sell, and it ain't right, and it's not fair. You got your pride, so don't care.
It's getting crazy out there. Didn't think it would happen to you. Sometimes it doesn't seem fair, and it blindsided you.
So what do you say to someone with a blind spot for the truth? This conversation's done, and I hope you get well soon.
It's getting crazy out there. A few months ago, my 10-year-old grandson showed me a picture on his iPhone. Yes, he has an iPhone. Of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon in 1969 and said, "You know, Poppy, this was faked." After I recovered from the shock, I had to have a discussion with him about good and bad information on the internet and social media. Then I spoke to my daughter about the incident. Ever since then, I've been doing a lot of thinking and reading about truth and its opposite, lies. I'm not referring here to the ultimate uppercase truth that's the subject of philosophers. I'm talking about factual, everyday truth, lowercase truth, the kind of truth we need to live our reasonable lives. These days we're deluged with information from so many sources: news media, social media, friends, family, films. How can we recognize the truth when we see it? And conversely, when do we call bullshit on the lies, misinformation, and disinformation that we see every day? That's what this talk is about. One of our UU principles is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. That principle is one that really attracted me to this church. As a scientist, I was trained to understand that the pursuit of truth is something that's messy. It's hard work. And you're never sure you've found it. Finding truth is somewhat like panning for gold. You have to eliminate a lot of mud and gravel before you find that nugget. It's a lifelong journey that we all are on as UUs. But today's world's so full of lies and misinformation, it can be overwhelming, leaving you wondering what to believe. And it astounds me how gullible people are to those distortions of the truth, even when confronted with no evidence to show that the statements are true. For example, most of us have been having a very difficult time with those who maintain that the 2020 election was rigged. How is it possible that such a claim can be held as truth when it's clear that there's no evidence to support it? What's going on? We're now living in what some are calling the post-truth world. Of course, that suggests that we ever had a truth world. In fact, there's always been hucksters out there. It's nothing new. Just go back to look at advertisements in the newspapers in the early 20th century and see the claims for pills and lotions that would cure every illness known to mankind. Then came the FDA. We even had a famous story about a goat doctor here in Kansas who would insert goat testicles in men to improve their virility. This was later shown to be a complete fabrication. Post-truth was selected the 2016 word of the year by the Oxford Dictionaries. They defined post-truth as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. This era is characterized by a vast virtual communication where politics thrives on a repudiation of facts and common sense. Post-truthness is reflected in political splits to be less about ideology and more about battle between facts and lies. The Economist magazine has devoted several pieces to post-truth politics, which it defines as a reliance on assertions that feel true but have no basis in fact. Such assertions often remain unverified and have little or no repercussions for the culprits, even if those claims are exposed as stark lies. They do little to delegitimize the perpetrator. Post-truth politics everywhere has a fundamental common denominator. It appeals to emotions and gut feeling more than facts and evidence. Fake news and conspiracy theories can go viral in a matter of hours, creating alternate realities and serving propaganda purposes. Post-truth is a threat to liberal democracy and its institutions and simultaneously exposes the vulnerability of the liberal order. Nowadays, the term fake news has become ubiquitous to the extent that it's conveniently used in an accusatory manner to denounce or belittle any uncomfortable or inconvenient facts. There are really two sides of the truth coin. One side deals with the vast amount of misinformation and lies that come from various nefarious sources. The other side of the coin has to do with truths and selective use of truths to manipulate us. The primary sources for my talk today were two books. One's by Tom Phillips entitled Truth, A Brief History of Total Bullshit. The second source is a book by Hector MacDonald entitled Truth, How the Many Sides of Every Story Shape Our Reality. So, why do people accept lies? According to Phillips, there's 7 reasons. First is the effort barrier. This has to do with the difficulty in checking on the validity of a claim. If it's too hard to verify, then you accept it as truth. Second is information vacuum. There's an awful lot of things in the world we just really don't know anything about. In the absence of information, we tend to lower our guard whenever something that claims to be factual information shows up, even if there's no good reason to believe it. Next is the BS feedback loop. This is a common one today. You get one of these when a faulty piece of information is repeated, but rather than repetition being seen for what it is, it instead gets treated as confirmation that the original information was accurate. Of course, this happens in a big way on social media. Fourth is wanting to be true. Another word for this is motivated reasoning or confirmation bias. Basically comes down to the fact that when you want to believe something, working out whether or not it's actually true comes pretty far down our brain's list of priorities. The next one is the ego trap. And this is where we really don't like to admit when we're wrong. Our brains don't like doing it, and there's a whole host of cognitive biases that push us away from even acknowledging that we might have messed up. Next is just not caring. Even when we could push back against an untruth, we don't always take it. We might think that everyone lies and decide that it's just not important whether something's true or false. Reminds me of Steve Bannon's recommendation to flood the zone with crap. The worry about the idea of fake news isn't actually that people believe false news, it's that they stop believing real news. And then lastly is the lack of imagination. This has to do with the lack of understanding of all the ways truth can be manifest. Since we have to live our lives on the assumption that most of what we're told is true, otherwise we descend into paranoia, we assume that if we read something in the news, then it's probably true. We think if someone seems trustworthy, then they aren't trying to scam us. Scammers take advantage of that trust factor, as we've seen recently in hacks on Reverend Rose's email account. Okay, now that we've addressed lies, let's look at the dangerous area of truths. In Hector MacDonald's book, he discusses the idea of competing truths. By this he means that anything you can observe can be described in many ways. Kind of reminds you of Kellyanne Conway's use of the term alternate facts. We all see the world through different lenses formed largely by the different truths we hear and read. Competing truths shape our reality. Competing truths inform our mindsets, and our mindsets determine our subsequent choices and actions. By mindset, I'm referring to the set of beliefs, ideas, and opinions that we hold about ourselves and the world around us. MacDonald does point out that there are actually factual truths versus statements that we act on as if they were true. For example, a factual truth is that water boils at 212 Fahrenheit, or that the earth is round. Although try telling that to flat earthers. We also need to understand the differences in sources of competing truths. He points out there are basically 3 types of communicators in the world that we need to be aware of. The first is the advocates. He calls advocates. These individuals select competing truths that create a reasonably accurate impression of reality in order to achieve a constructive goal. These are the good guys. Then there's the misinformers. These folks innocently propagate competing truths that unintentionally distort reality. Results are bad, but these are not necessarily bad people. And thirdly is the misleaders, those who deliberately deploy competing truths to create an impression of reality that they know is not true. These are the bad guys. So MacDonald describes these 4 classes of competing truths that are used by these various communicators. These include partial truths, subjective truths, artificial truths, and unknown truths. Let's talk about each of those a little bit. Partial truths. Nobody has the whole truth. Most statements don't convey this entire truth. It stems from the complexity of various subjects, our understanding of history, critical context, and use of numbers and statistics. So you may get true information, but it's the wrong information, or it's only partially true. A good example would be in the convenient deletion of the story of the 1921 Tulsa race riots from most of our history books. Subjective truths. To say something is morally good or desirable or financially valuable is a subjective truth. Everyone has their own preferences when it comes to these truths. For example, you may prefer a Ford or a Chevy truck. Doesn't mean Ford is necessarily better than Chevy, it's your preference. Or a certain color of clothing or a certain style of hair. These are truths for you, but not for everybody. Third category is artificial truths. These are truths that rely on how we define our terms, or agree to certain conventions, or use different names for things. A good example is how some foods are named. Did you know that the original name of the Chilean sea bass was the Patagonian toothfish? Who would eat a toothfish? Another artificial truth is the value of paper money. It only has value beyond the paper it's printed on is because we all agree that it does. And then the last category is unknown truths. These are truths that are based on certain predictions about the future and can influence your present day actions. A good example is climate change. We make forecasts about what the Earth's going to be like years down the road. These truths also include religious or ideological beliefs that guide many people's lives, but can't be proven false. There's an interesting story. A few years ago, I had a conversation with my evangelical brother Dan regarding truth. He asked me to participate in a truth program through his evangelical church. It was a multi-session video series that I understood to explore truth. But when I watched the first video, it was clear that the only source of truth that they were speaking about was the Bible. The lecturer held up a copy of the Bible and said that everything we need to know is in this book. I've had discussions with my brother for many years regarding God and my atheism, and this appeared to be an effort to convert me to his way of thinking. I watched the first video with him and then realized this is not for me, and explained to him that the premise of the course was so diametrically opposed to my thinking that I couldn't continue. To me, his version of the truth is greatly constrained by a belief in the validity of a single source, but that would be classified as an unknown truth. So how can we tell if we're being duped by misleaders? MacDonald offers a checklist of questions to ask yourself. These questions are intended to help us assess a suspicious statement and decide whether or not it's a misleading truth. We need to use our own judgment and do appropriate research to come to our own conclusions. Number 1, is the statement true or accurate? Will it change the way I see things? Might it affect my behavior? What agenda does the communicator have that this statement will help them advance? What facts or context might they have left out? Have they provided evidence to back up their statement? Is it reliable? How else might a particular fact or figure be represented? Would this change its meaning? Does the statement depend on a subjective judgment of morality, desirability, or financial value? Is the communicator defining their terms the same way I would? Am I being influenced by their choice of name or emotive anecdote? Does the statement depend on a prediction or belief? And if so, are alternative predictions or beliefs more credible? And then lastly, would someone else be able to convey a different but equally truthful expression of reality? So what can we do to make sure that our sources of information are reliable and unbiased? Sometimes we're not even aware that we're being manipulated. One way is to consult media bias platforms that provide relative ratings as to a source's political bias and quality of their reporting. An example is a media bias chart produced by an organization called Ground News. This chart displays the ratings of various news sources. The more the center of the graph the source is, the more neutral they are. The more to the right, the more conservative, the more to the left, the more liberal. The higher in the chart, the more truthful or reliable, and the lower the chart, the less truthful. So things like the One American Network, Fox News, Breitbart are way on the right. MSNBC, CNN, for example, are on the left, but there are some right down the middle. I listen to a station on SiriusXM called POTUS, which is Politics of the United States. You will note in this chart that they're about as close to the sweet spot as you can get. We probably can't see it very well, but it's there. Anyway, because it is dangerous to stay within your echo chamber, you're better served by getting a diversity of news so you can better assess the actual reality. To me, it's better to find a more neutral and reliable source that gives both sides of the issue. The important message is that no one has the complete truth. They all have portions of it, and we are better served by being in a constant alert for the biases that are inherent in the world. Another strategy is to take advantage of various fact-checking organizations. On this chart are some of those available to you. They do much of the work for us and report when, almost on a daily basis, as to whether facts in the news are accurate. It's another tool in our pursuit of the truth. Some of you may recognize the title of my talk today as the title of a 1971 song by John Lennon, in which he says, "I'm sick and tired of hearing things from uptight, short-sighted, narrow-minded hypocritics. All I want is the truth. Just give me the truth, some truth. I've had enough of reading things by neurotic, psychotic, pig-headed politicians. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth." Let's all establish a high bar for being told the truth by our leaders, media, and friends. Thank you.
The work of the church depends on us, our generosity of time, wisdom, and financial resources. We invite you to give generously to support the ongoing work of the church. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared values. As Richard comes forward to extinguish the chalice, we remember that we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing hymn is number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere. Number 95.
I don't think the flow of bad information will subside anytime soon. It really depends on our diligence in questioning the validity of the information that's presented to us. It's certainly not easy to be on the lookout for deception. I wish you luck in that quest.